Our politics in Canada are insane right now. One of the reasons is because Parliament itself has been dissolved. And in the middle of a crisis, we've got a lot of crises going on, actually. One of them is an economic crisis, Donald Trump threatening tariffs against Canada. But instead of resuming the business of Parliament, the Liberals are having a leadership race at this moment. And Trudeau, I think it's pretty clear, dissolved Parliament so he could evade the possibility of a non-confidence vote. Is there any way to stop this? Maybe there is. As you remember, a couple of weeks ago, we talked to John Carpay, the boss of the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms. That's a public interest law firm, and they are taking the government to court, challenging the authority of the Prime Minister to dissolve Parliament. I thought it was a crazy long shot trial, but then John told me, John Carpay, the boss of said organization, that there's a precedent in the United Kingdom. And they actually won over there. Joining us now to talk about this and more is John Carpay. John, nice to see you in person.
Good to see you.
When you first announced that you were going to sue the government to stop them from dissolving Parliament, I thought, there's no way. Parliament is supreme in so many ways, and the Governor General was the instrument by which this happened. I thought, there's no way. But then you told me that this actually happened in the UK not too long ago, and the dissolution of Parliament was ruled unconstitutional. Tell me, first of all, how did you know that? And second of all, what does it mean for Canada?
Well, kudos go to our lawyer, James Manson, who's based in Toronto, and he looked at the situation. He was aware of the United Kingdom Supreme Court ruling from 2019, where Boris Johnson had a minority government, didn't like the way that the Brexit, the United Kingdom's exit from the European Union was taking too long, prorogued Parliament for 5 weeks, which that was longer than the normal 1 to 3 weeks. And it only took a month from the time that a citizen filed until they got a ruling from the Supreme Court of the United Kingdom. And in a nutshell, they said, look, you can't use prorogation as a tool to promote the government's agenda. The government must be accountable to Parliament. And so there's nothing wrong with prorogation when the Parliament session comes to a natural end, but it was an abuse for partisan purposes. And that's what we have here now. But here it's 11 weeks. Yeah. 11 weeks. If this was a 1, 2, 3 week prorogation, fine. But this is 11 weeks where Parliament's committees are shut down. They cannot compel a cabinet minister to come and answer to a committee, and there's just no accountability.
A moment ago I said you can't challenge parliamentary supremacy, but actually I got it upside down. Parliament is supreme
over the government.
But they're not allowed to come in and dismiss the government. It's almost, I don't want to use the word coup because that's thrown around too much. But when an unpopular prime minister is afraid of being thrown out and he dismisses Parliament, he's the one violating parliamentary supremacy. That's amazing. So I understand that the federal court, is that where this is being heard, has granted you the right to a very speedy trial. Normally these things take months or even years. So you are getting into court when?
We are doing oral argument on Thursday, February 13th, Friday, February 14th.
Wow.
And we could have a ruling as soon as Monday the 17th, Tuesday the 18th, because the court already has the written brief.
Right.
And the court really gave the federal government a bit of a reprimand. The federal government came into court and said, we'll get back to you next week and we'll let you know our position as to whether or not we think that this is urgent. And the judge wasn't buying it. And
which judge, remember which judge it was?
Crampton, the Chief Justice.
Oh, so the fact that they're bringing in the Chief Justice is very interesting. And it makes sense because this is a very political ruling and you want the biggest boss of the federal court to make that ruling. Perhaps a younger judge might be nervous to do something as dramatic as make a constitutional ruling like this. So on the other hand, the Chief Justice is probably a political animal himself to get to the top of that greasy pole. But if someone's going to rebuke the government, it had better be the Chief Justice as opposed to a more minor or junior justice. I don't know, maybe I'm applying too much political lens to this, but it's an inherently political battle.
Yeah, I think it's a constitutional issue, and there's no Canadian case law on it yet. If somebody had thought about it, back in the day, theoretically, somebody could have challenged Stephen Harper's prorogation of Parliament, and who knows, a different fact scenario, but that would have been interesting. But nobody did. Nobody thought about it. And in this situation here, it's not a COVID, masks, vaccine, travel restriction, none of that, because as I've outlined in my book, we've had a serious problem with judges in Canada that they're writing the media narrative into their court rulings without not supported by evidence.
Right.
But that was because there's so much fear. This is like a totally different. We don't have 24-hour-a-day media fear-mongering about what would happen if Parliament comes back into session before March 24th. So it's just a fresh start.
Yeah. Wow. It's so much audacity I forget exactly how many months Trudeau dissolved Parliament for, but it was enormous, all the way up to March 24th.
11 weeks. Yeah. And they got to come back by March 31st. Otherwise, they need parliamentary authorization for the continued spending of money after March 31st. 11 weeks.
That's crazy. That really is an authoritarian regime.
It's an abuse. Prorogation for valid reasons, like the parliamentary session has come to a natural conclusion. Okay, fine. This is for the partisan interests of one political party. You can't do that.
It was a trick that he did it. Trudeau was going to be fired. Instead, he dissolved the people who were going to fire him. He said, I'm going to resign in the future, but he didn't resign. He's still going on junkets. I just saw a headline that he's off to Paris for another luxury junket. He's trying to wring out everything he can. But it would be quite something if you managed to overturn this. Because when did you say your hearing was again?
February 13th and 14th.
That's right, and you think the result could be known as soon as the 16th or something like that. The Liberal leadership race concludes on March 9th, which is one of the reasons it's scheduled that way. They wanted to select the new prime minister through the Liberal Party apparatus as opposed to through Parliament. That's extra insane. There would be quite something if Parliament was brought back before the Liberals finish their shenanigans. And that's their mess. Why should Canadians have to wait around for their mess to be sorted out?
Well, that's one of the points that a political party, neither the Liberal Party nor any other party, is a constitutional player. These parties, they exist, they're real, but constitutionally, it's irrelevant. It's like, well, this is bad for your party. Well, too bad.
Are there any interveners who've asked to join as a friend of the court, as they say, to give a briefing or a point of view, or is it just you guys alone?
I think that perhaps I'm not. I'd have to get back to you on it. Perhaps the Canadian Civil Liberties Association may have. No, the Democracy Watch.
Okay.
Democracy Watch, to my knowledge, is intervening.
Oh, good.
And I think
they're
that's
probably
the
on
only
your side.
group.
I would imagine.
On our side.
They're not bad. They're a little lefty, but actually, I think they do good work. Quite
I think
often.
so too.
Wow. Well, I'm really excited about that, and that is coming up so soon. That's great. Well, tell me some of the other stuff you do, and your book is out.
Corrupted by Fear, How the Charter Was Betrayed and What Canadians Can Do About It. I wrote, the book arose in part because when I was going to public meetings in Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, Regina, Saskatoon, whatever, at public meetings, people often, every public meeting I went to, there's at least one person that said, what is going on with these judges? Are they getting thick wads of $100 bills? Are they getting threatening phone calls from the Prime Minister telling them that they have to rule 4 lockdowns or get into trouble? Are they getting threatening emails from the World Economic Forum? And my answer was no, I don't believe that. But the question's valid. Why are judges, so when, the Justice Centre, we sued governments across Canada over lockdowns and vaccine passports and lost pretty much every case. Some of them we had minor partial victories, but on the whole, the governments would admit in court, yes, lockdowns violate the freedoms of conscience, religion, expression, association, peaceful assembly, mobility, travel, bodily autonomy. Yes, all these rights and freedoms are violated by lockdowns and travel restrictions. The governments admitted that in court.
Yeah.
But then they said, but it's justified under Section 1. And so what's going on? So we had, for example, in the Gateway case in Manitoba, the judge wrote into his judgment, COVID is unprecedented, and it's the worst global pandemic in a century. Both of which are false. COVID is not unprecedented. We had the Spanish flu of 1918, which was much, much worse. Even in the 20th century, the Asian flu of 1957 was more deadly. The Hong Kong flu of 1968 was more deadly than COVID. So he writes these false assertions into his judgment for which there's no evidence put before the court. So corrupted by fear, my thesis is, judges are not getting thick wads of $100 bills. They're not getting threatening phone calls from the Prime Minister. They're not getting nasty emails from the WEF. But they bought into this media fear-mongering. Every hour of every day, it's all, oh, COVID, it's unprecedented. And people who are full of fear, they don't think clearly. And that's my thesis.